He'll do this a lot. That's a common Drake move.
Waving?
He'll be like, just like
That's true.
when he's singing. Yeah.
This Rev 3 Games preview is brought to you by GoDaddy. Hey guys, Tara here, and I've got my buddy Nick with me today.
Hello.
We are going to talk about the Elder Scrolls Online beta, which we got the chance to play last weekend. Just a note, this is PvE only. If you want to hear about the PvP, we're going to have another video up on that next week. But in the meantime, let's talk about our experience this weekend.
Yeah.
When you start the game, you sort of start it in hell, right? You've been like sacrificed by some Daedric cult.
Some sort of weird realm where the dead go.
Yeah, and you soon escape with the help of the Prophet, and you make it to Tamriel. Now, what's interesting is that you and I started in different areas once we got back to reality.
Right, so as soon as I got through that whole intro quest, I got dropped off in like a sort of Khajiit camp, like an army camp, and you were like on a boat, right?
I woke up on a ship, but it was docked at a place, but it wasn't like an orc world or anything. I didn't get to the orc part until a few hours into the game, I believe. But the story, you know, I think it's pretty interesting from the get-go. The missions and quests, I would say, it's kind of like a 50-50 split between Elder Scrolls and MMO. So like there is a lot of, you know, typical MMO style quests. Go here, talk to this person, steal this for me. One thing I did like though was that there seems to be far less fetch quests than there are in, say, a World of Warcraft style game.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think to me the way it reads is it's a lot of pretty traditional MMO structured quests, but they've picked and choose the ones that fit into the Elder Scrolls mythos best, and they're all sort of couched in that lore. So like, if you're into that lore specifically, I think there's probably I get the sense from playing it that there's a huge volume of content, right? Like there's hundreds of hours of reading and talking about that stuff if that's something you really, really like.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for instance, in World of Warcraft, a lot of the beginning quests are like, go kill 10 wolves and do that. Like, I didn't have a single quest like that. Actually, one of the coolest quests I did was where you have to recruit members for this woman, and then you start a heist together, which I thought was really cool. As far as interface goes, it is a lot like Skyrim.
It's really interesting, I think, because it seems like they spent the past couple years trying to make this game a game that people who were used to Skyrim would be comfortable in immediately. Like everything about the HUD, not the rest of the menus, but the HUD it is like pixel perfect recreation of Skyrim. The map, the compass, like the targeting, the stealth. When you like go into stealth and the eye appears and closes, it's just like pure Skyrim.
It's very clean, simple, nice aesthetic. But to what you were saying, I do think that all of the other menu options, like especially with regards to crafting and blacksmithing, are very confusing and they're not very well explained.
It just feels like an old, and this is true, I think, about the game in a lot of ways. It feels like an MMO from a few years ago. Like, you can kind of tell that it's been in the cooker for a while, and as a result, like, if you gave me this game and told me that it came out in like 2009, I would probably believe you.
Really?
You know what I mean? Just in terms of like the whole interface and everything about it just feels like a traditional MMO. Right down to the fact that I think, at least in the version we played, you had to use mouse and keyboard. I know there'll be controller support eventually because that game is coming out on the Xbox One and PS4. But yeah, it just felt old-timey in some ways.
Hard,
Throwback,
I mean, it's hard to do controller support when you've got the hotbar. So let's talk about combat because it is sort of evenly split between hotbar items and melee combat, and then there's also archery, some ranged combat in there. One thing that I do really like about the combat is that no matter what race or class you are, you can use any weapon you want, which, I mean, for typical MMOs, they usually tie you into a specific weapon type. Here you can do pretty much whatever you want. I think the melee combat does mix things up from the standard hotbar combat, but in my experience, I found that all of your hotbar skills are way more powerful than melee combat.
So my Khajiit only had one hotbar skill, and I didn't even unlock it until like after about an hour.
Really?
So I was, because I'm a very melee-focused character.
That's true.
And so I spent a lot of time just with feeling out the melee combat, and I think it was maybe a little more actiony than I was expecting in a good way. I think the bar for melee combat in Elder Scrolls isn't super high. I thought in Skyrim it was a little janky. So compared to that, I think it's like, it's almost the same. It's almost as real-time as Skyrim. there's a little more dodging. One thing I really like about the combat actually is like when a ranged enemy fires at you, it paints this little map of where their bullet's gonna go, and then you can like double tap A or D to dodge.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And one thing I also liked is that the enemies that you're fighting jump around a lot.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them do. And like, if you've ever played World of Warcraft, you basically just sit there and press the same button over and over again. And like, the enemies have very little AI in them. They feel a little bit more intelligent here.
Yeah, they feel more like standard video game enemies. You know what I mean? And I think I have to imagine that the feedback they've been getting, the amount of time they spent developing this game, I have to imagine some of that was spent making it feel more like a Elder Scrolls console game in a way. Like making the enemies feel like video game enemies, not MMO enemies, which to me, that's a big difference.
But yeah, I mean, the controls are pretty simple. It's just like left mouse click to attack, right to block, and then you can press both to interrupt an enemy's attack. I found myself using that less and less just because it didn't really, like, I'm not used to that sort of control scheme.
When they teach that, when they show you that technique, they also put advanced next to it in parentheses just to show you that, like, maybe that's not necessary for the first few levels. That's kind of like a high-end melee combat thing.
So let's talk about online stuff, because you and I were sort of running on different schedules, so we didn't actually get to play together when we were playing. But I did run into some other people in the world, and as far as I know, all that stuff seems to go well. Like, adding you as a friend was
pretty painless.
Pretty painless. One thing I do like is that rather than having a bunch of different realms you can play on, it's basically one mega realm. So you don't have to worry about being on a different realm from your friends. However, you start out in a specific area, and the area you're in is tied to your quest line. So I can't just freely explore the world from the get-go. I have to get to that point in the main storyline.
And that, to me, that feels a little antithetical to what an MMO is, and especially what an Elder Scrolls game is. It just feels like maybe that's a remnant of some of the older, like, because this game's been in development for a million years, and like it just seems like that's kind of something that might have been acceptable 5 years ago in an MMO, but now feels a little maybe dated.
And I want to believe that that has to do with technical limitations, because obviously it's not as good of a plan as letting people freely explore the world. But I mean, when you have one big mega realm, who knows what the technical limitations are there. I will say also, this game looks great. Yeah,
like the game just looks really, really good in general, especially for an MMO. Like when you get to that big sort of diamond thing, the prison that the guy is trapped in, it just was really detailed. It didn't look like an MMO at a lot of points, and I think that contributes a lot to it feeling more like Skyrim and less like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings Online or something like that.
I'm not as into like the cartoonish World of Warcraft, like Guild Wars 2 style MMO. This looks like Skyrim. And that is one thing that is really appealing about it to me. So yeah, those are our impressions of the PvE aspect of Elder Scrolls Online. Like I said, next week they're having the PvP beta. So we're going to have our thoughts for you on Friday, February 14th. So congratulations, you now have Valentine's Day plans. Hey, if you like Rev3 games and you want to support the channel, then why not sign up at GoDaddy? Whether you're an established business owner or a new customer, GoDaddy wants to help you kick ass online. Right now, they're offering .com domains for just $2.95. Visit GoDaddy.com and enter the promo code GAMES295 to get your next .com domain for just $2.95.